Hello and welcome back to the channel once again. My name is Hollow and this time we're talking about Ghost of Tsushima, the promising action-adventure game by Sucker Punch Productions that we've been waiting for a good while now, all the way back since the same E3 Sekiro was fully announced alongside Nioh 2 and Ghost. Now back then we saw both gameplay and story stuff in a fantastic old samurai film style. Now even then, when 3 feudal Japan games were announced all at the same time, this one still stood out to me as something unique. Now, years later, we have multiple trailers, including the recent gameplay showcase that really showed us what this game actually is, and frankly, it looked really good. Today, I'm going to break down everything that we know so far from these various trailers, interviews about the game with devs, and so on. So, let's get started, firstly, with the story. Set on Tsushima Island in 1274 feudal Japan, the Mongol invasion is just beginning as they begin to slaughter masses, including most of the samurai that defend this island. This is actually based on the original event that happened in real-world history. Although the setting, yes, is based on that real-world history, the main character and the storyline itself are fictional. The reason for this attack was due to the location of the island. It's right between Korea and mainland Japan, so it's actually an ideal location to cut off trade, and with that, it's a good staging ground for the invasion as a whole. The Mongol horde invaded with hundreds and hundreds of ships, defeating the governor and his militia in the opening attack, and then they began their full invasion of the island. With that, the samurai who guarded the island were faced with overwhelming numbers and no real hope for success if they stuck to their original and honorable style of combat. They ended up throwing away their own conflicts between various clans of samurai to work together and adopt the methods used by the Mongol horde themselves with hit and run strategies. We play as Jin Sekai, one of the last surviving samurai who is living out in the wilds, still trying to defend the island and repel the invaders. Jin originally is taught to face his foes head on by the Lord of Tsushima Isle, his uncle, using honorable combat and respect. And after the initial failure to defend against the Mongols, the samurai are basically ravaged and destroyed, with only a few remaining. Jin being one of these, he is able to throw away his honor for the sake of survival and attempt to avenge his home. The story's main focus is kind of all about that inner battle of Jin, to approach as an honorable warrior head on, or the dishonorable ghost striking from the shadows and using any means possible to win. We will slowly see him become the Ghost of Tsushima as he learns that he simply cannot defeat the Mongols with just his sword, and he then abandons his teachings and traditions, sacrificing a lot about who he was to save his home. The reason Jin is known as the Ghost of Tsushima is actually due to the fact that he died during the first defense of the island. In sort of a massive battleground in which he was second in command, it was believed that he was killed. And when he returned, people saw him as a vengeful spirit who was revived, protecting the people and avenging the dead. The people actually see him kind of as an idol, while the Mongols slowly begin to fear him as the rumor becomes legend. Now let's talk gameplay and the 2 core gameplay styles featured in Ghost. The recent 18-minute gameplay trailer from a few weeks back shows us these 2 core playstyles against one another in 2 examples of how one player faces off against one enemy camp and conquers it in 2 entirely different ways. Firstly, we see the way of the samurai, head on, dueling opponents and facing the extremely difficult odds that are stacked against you all at once. In this style of play, you make enemies aware of you. You let them prepare themselves for the fight. You'll watch the opponents, careful with your positioning, waiting for the enemy to expose themselves and then strike or reply to their attack with, say, a dodge or a riposte. With this playstyle, you'll need to read your opponents, time your attacks carefully, and parry successfully, consistently. You can completely dismember enemies in this game and crush those that challenge you in smooth, precise movement and attacks. It looks incredible, and a skilled player can absolutely obliterate any foe, any number of foes at that, with this method of combat. On top of that, we also have access to the special samurai mode, which you enter by directly challenging one single opponent. This sort of letterbox effect will kick in, the enemy will accept your challenge, and you'll face off in this cinematic style single draw fight. Whether you attack first or wait for the enemy to be vulnerable and make a mistake is up to you, but when you do strike and win, we'll see a nice slow-mo payoff before we face the next enemy, defeating them one by one in clean, precise strikes. Once again, timing, positioning, accuracy, all of these come into play here. I would assume the samurai mode comes in handy most against tight-knit opponents that are all quite close to each other to pick them off smoothly, one by one, and maybe also challenge the big, stronger general or leader types too to a 1v1 where possible. Meanwhile, the other side of the coin, the Ghost. The Ghost gameplay is very different, focused on that more elusive, dirty, dishonorable style of gameplay via stealth and trickery, assassinating enemies before they even see you coming, and then evading foes to strike from another unknown position. It's a very interesting style of play, and an interesting mechanic from this style of play is the element of fear, where you can actually gain a bigger reputation on the island as you assassinate more people, to the point where enemies cannot even stand to fight you when they simply see you. Coming in handy when you're facing off against a group of enemies and need to reposition before continuing the fight. You know, if they're bumbling with their weapon or even running away, that's an easy kill. And this whole playstyle is about exposing enemy weaknesses and never taking a fair fight. Now, depending on your progression and position, you're able to assassinate multiple foes in one silent death chain and make use of your thrown kunai for any follow-up kills on any enemy who may have spotted you before they could possibly sound an alarm. This gameplay is all about instant kills before the enemy can raise a hand against you or even expect your attack, avoiding direct combat wherever possible, in stark contrast to the samurai style. In this gameplay, we'll make use of a variety of tools like the wind chimes, the firecrackers, his grappling hook for movement, and the bow for longer range kills too. It's all about distraction, trickery, evasion, all that kind of stuff. Now, the way it's described in the gameplay trailer and even in the showcasing of that, it seemed like the two styles of combat kind of go against each other, clearly not going hand in hand. A hybrid style of gameplay is kind of common in other games where you can kind of pick and choose what you want and do whatever, whereas in Ghost, it kind of seems like that the two playstyles wouldn't work well together. However, as it turns out, you can entirely function as a samurai, head-on fighting, while in, say, the full Ghost set and style, without any horrible drawbacks. It's possible. Now, the heavy armor of the samurai would protect you better, however, but ultimately, if you have a playstyle in mind, you should equip yourself for it and then try to commit to that for the battle, for the biggest advantage possible. But there's nothing stopping you from playing stealthy in heavy armor or doing frontal combat in a stealth set. It's just not to your advantage to play it like that. As the story progresses, we've said that Jin will go down that route of the Ghost, shirking honor for results to take back Tsushima however he can. I mean, obviously, right? It's in the name, you knew that. But the gameplay will never be forced, which is for the best. But like I say, ultimately, we see Jin go from the samurai style to the Ghost style as we get further through the game. I also mentioned earlier that we can select heavy samurai armor or light Ghost armor. These things actually impact your gameplay, offering better protection or faster and less visible movement for one. But the fact that you can customize these sets is really cool, because not only can you choose between many different visual styles of armor and equipment and the statistic advantages or disadvantages of those things, but you can also change the patterns and color too. We see in the trailer Jin collecting various brightly colored flowers, plants, bamboo, linens to create dyes or materials that allow you to do that, earning your preferred cosmetic style via the gameplay, not some BS DLC for $5 or more, which is wonderful. This also hints at crafting in general, whether you go to someone to do it or more likely craft things yourself. Your supplies are varied, right? With the tools like the thrown kunai being limited after use, so you probably need to craft more of those, as well as crafting your gear and cosmetics on top. Alongside the gear and cosmetics though, we have the charm system. These work as passive benefits that you can equip to sort of augment your playstyle depending on what you want to do. In the trailer, we saw the defense charm, Oku Ninnushi, which allows us to recover health over time out of combat, or the stealth charm, Toxic Demise, adding a poison effect to your wind charms, which will kill any enemy who goes and picks them up. The unseen respite, causing your smoke bombs to heal 25% of your health alongside breaking vision of their original purpose. So depending on your preferred playstyle, you get to augment your tools to give yourself an even better advantage in your specific playstyle. These charms are undeniably powerful, especially ones that restore health in tough situations. Making sure you go out and collect these will not only be very rewarding as a way to explore the world, but ultimately allow you to create specific builds and try to find the strongest or most fun playstyle for you. Now, while I mentioned exploration, let's talk about the map, which is obviously open world from what we've seen in the trailers, featuring massive variations in the beautiful visuals and terrain and scenery, and the freedom to explore it all, however and whenever you want. We'll have massive open landscapes alongside tighter, dense tree lines and enemy bases. It was mentioned in some interviews that the world won't be swarming with enemies, like say a Dark Souls game where every moment that you're moving around, there's probably an enemy around that corner. Here, yes, the island has been invaded and ultimately taken over by the Mongol horde, but there's still survivors out there, neutral or even friendly to you. There is the wildlife that you'll encounter at random, who might help you in your journey. It's not all going to be blood and combat every minute. There's going to be a lot of peace and slower pace to your exploration. It is a world that you can go out and explore rather than being pressured into combat, consistent combat. And the world's got lots of secrets and side things to do and find. And like I mentioned, wildlife can come and help too. We saw in the trailer a bird leading Jin to an interesting event or encounter. This fox leads him to a secret cave entrance, and we see some climbing elements too, where Jin is climbing up this large hill, obviously looking for maybe a hidden shrine or something. From what we've seen, the terrain looks pretty diverse, not only in its detail, but the mechanical aspect of it too. Now let's talk about some more minor aspects of the game, the sort of stuff that impacts us immersion nerds. Firstly, with guiding wind, which is a minor detail from the trailer of the gameplay where we saw this guiding wind mechanic. Instead of having a compass or a marker that you see on your map all the time, you'll briefly summon a wind that will blow in the direction you need to head, removing any need for a constant map check or UI checking or just an ongoing overlay, keeping everything visually very clean to match those visuals, which I really appreciate. Next, we have the language choice. You'll be able to choose between English or Japanese voice acting for your playthrough, just like you could do in, say, Sekiro. Naturally, I'd always suggest you go for the original language for any series, be it film, game, TV, or whatever. If something was originally German, I'd say watch it in German and read the subtitles. You get a better experience that way. But I cannot lie and say that the English voice acting for titles of this nature hasn't improved. It's steadily been getting better and better over the last decade. Do you guys remember Gubu from Sekiro? Insanely, an English voice actor did a much better job in a Japanese setting. There was way more passion and drive in this example between the English voice actor compared to the original Japanese. But anyway, it's up to you. I imagine I'll try both. You never know, but it is really nice to have that option, and hey, things are getting better for the English dubs these days. Next, we have the cinema mode for you old-style nerds, in case you want to live out your old-style Eastern film dreams, black and white, adding a new aesthetic to every scene in cinematic. Now, yes, I'm sure lots of people out there will appreciate this, and there are some films that are done like this even to this day, or have alternate versions for people who really appreciate something like this. But personally, I like colour. And with that colour, we have the photo mode to take advantage of. The game is undeniably beautiful, so it's quite nice to have an expansive photo mode to really appreciate those visuals. We've got different filters, weather effects, depth of field, letterbox effects, and more. Even able to add motion if you want to, for maybe backgrounds that you might want to make. It's very well made. And there you have it anyway. There's all the main features and design choices that we know about so far. The more I've learned about this game, the more excited I've felt. I have to say again, like, that very first trailer made it feel like we'd be playing a samurai film and the gameplay would be kind of back burner to the story. Now it feels like a fully realized game that we can approach how we want and still keeps that samurai film vibe. I'm really looking forward to it, so you can absolutely expect lots of videos on release. What do you think about Ghost? I think the biggest downside for this game is the fact that it's a PlayStation exclusive, but hey, after the PS5 release, maybe exclusives won't suck as much thanks to, say, the better capabilities of next gen. Either way though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.